everybody to your questions. So that's kind of how it's going to go. We have about 20 minutes, and so without further ado, Chief Chuck Lavelle. Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks everyone for being here. I just wanted to take the opportunity to get our partners together and come out and talk a little bit about some of the planning for the election season here in Portland. We have a long history of working together. The folks you see behind me, we've had a good working relationship. We expect that to continue through the election period. Our overarching goal, as always, is really for safety and to have a safe election period here in the city of Portland. We at the Portland Police Bureau have canceled days off to have additional staffing on hand. We're working very closely with one another and other partners and elected officials to make sure we have the operational resources on hand that we'll need, and we're coordinating operationally and communications-wise as well. We realize here that this election season could prompt people to be upset or excited about election results, and we encourage people to exercise their First Amendment rights, but to do so safely. We realize there may be mass gatherings or marches or things of that nature, and we're supportive of that, but what we want to ask is that people don't engage in criminal activity or harmful behavior. I've got some of the partners here behind me, and I'm going to give them a chance to come up and have a few words, and I think we'll take some questions afterwards. So I'll introduce OSP Superintendent Terry Davey.
Good afternoon. I'm Terry Davey. I'm the Superintendent of the Oregon State Police, and I'm here today on behalf of the state faction of law enforcement to reassure Portlanders and all Oregonians that law enforcement is working together as we transition into next week, the election cycle. Not only are we working together in collaboration, but communication and planning is the key for all of us. So on behalf of your state troopers, we do not know what next week brings, but we have been working internally inside our own organization to make sure every trooper is ready to go. They're prepared, they're here for all of Oregon, and if needed, we are here to assist and help our partners here at Portland Police Bureau and also the county with Multnomah County or any other area within Oregon that may need our assistance. So I appreciate everybody taking the time to listen today and to understand that in cooperation, we are all here to reassure that we do have everyone's best interest in heart, and our goal is to ensure that individuals can gather and peacefully protest. And that is our number one goal, is to make sure people are safe. And also it is important property is also safe because our community needs us to be here to ensure that. So on behalf of the state police, thank you for allowing us to be here today. And I have the pleasure of introducing the Sheriff of Multnomah County, Mike Reese.
Thank you, Superintendent. Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. I want to first and foremost say that elections free of intimidation and violence are the hallmark of our democracy. And the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office is dedicated to protecting our right to vote and to ensuring that people have safe and accessible processes during this election season. Law enforcement agencies are working together and with our local elections offices to ensure that voters feel welcome and safe as they drop ballots off, or if they have questions and need to go to the elections office. As already mentioned in media releases and by other folks, we don't have an identifiable threat at this time here in Multnomah County directed towards our elections. Regardless of that, we are stepping up visible patrols at ballot drop-off locations and election headquarters to ensure that people feel safe and that if there is an issue, that we've got a quick response to that. I want to be really clear that voter intimidation, disruption, blocking access to ballot drop sites, preventing people from casting their ballots, any violence before or after the election will not be tolerated. We're going to have a physical presence with law enforcement agencies and other partners to ensure that our election process, both before the election and afterwards, is safe, and that we have enough resources in place to do that. I want to ask the community that if they have any reports of intimidation, interference, or threats towards voters, to call that in. So if you fear imminent violence, call 911. If it's not an emergency and you have a question, reach out to the elections office to make sure that your question is getting an answer. Make sure to document. If you see something suspicious, document what you see and report that to the elections office or local law enforcement. We're going to continue to plan and to work with our partners right up through election and the week afterwards, again, to ensure that we have a safe process that people know they can depend on. We're going to support our elections office and people throughout Multnomah County as we vote and ensure our democracy is healthy and thriving. And it's my privilege to introduce District Attorney Mike Schmidt.
Thank you, Sheriff Reese. My name is Mike Schmidt. I'm the Multnomah County District Attorney. And I want our community to know that my office and our criminal justice partners are fully prepared to protect every person's right to vote without interference. Coercion of any type will not be tolerated. And while it's too late to mail in your ballot, voters in Multnomah County should have confidence that official ballot drop sites are safe. And we won't tolerate anybody who attempts to intimidate voters. I encourage our community, as the sheriff said, to report suspicious activity involving voter tampering, fraud, or interference. Trust in our electoral process is vital. And when Election Day comes, no matter the results, we must remember that our community deserves to be safe. We know that there will be gatherings on Election Day leading up to and likely thereafter. And we know that as the results are tabulated and announced across our nation, some will be happy, while others will be disappointed or angry. If you're going to take to the streets to make your voice heard, let people know how you feel. Put it on signs, put it into chants, demonstrate in marches, but please do so safely. Remember that this is our community, a community we are proud of, a community that is tolerant of opposing viewpoints, but not afraid to vociferously argue. And remember that at the end of the day, we're all human beings. We're not two-dimensional caricatures. Our opinions are nuanced and varied, and all should be valued and have a right to be heard. For those who incite violence or harm, my office stands prepared to hold you accountable. We have and will continue to collaboratively work with the Portland Police, the Sheriff, and the Oregon State Police to make sure that people who are committing assaults, property damage, looting are identified and ultimately arrested and prosecuted. Thank you. And with that, I think we'll open it up for questions.
Yes, please, and if you could just address your question to the head of each agency by name. Go ahead, please. And maybe you can step in a little bit closer, 6 feet apart.
Can I ask who's going to be, is there a unified command or Portland Police or State Police in charge of the law enforcement responses leading up to election and after?
So right now we're working in concert. We've worked closely in the past and together on these types of events. Right now we're just working very hard to make sure we have the resources, personnel-wise and infrastructure-wise, in place. The details of what the actual unified command piece, if that comes to fruition, haven't been ironed out yet. There's still a lot of details in the planning stages, but like I said, I'll assure everyone that we've worked together closely in the past doing these same types of events we may be looking at during the election week, and we'll be prepared to work together and do everything we can to make sure the election time in Portland is safe.
What are you still trying to work out with other law enforcement?
Well, typically in mutual aid situations, we try to figure out who can bring resources to the table, whether that's, crowd control or some other functions. There's a lot that goes into it, and there's also partners within the city that provide infrastructures. There's a lot of city bureaus that are part of it. A lot of the communication and planning. We plan to put out information through our Joint Information Center and things of that nature. So there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle, aside from just the kind of boots on the ground law enforcement response. On On election night, I'd have to look and see kind of what the numbers break down to. We're looking at what we would need in a crowd control capacity, but we also have calls for service, 911 calls that we have to respond to as well. And we have to break those up amongst 3 shifts throughout that day and throughout the precinct. So what it'll come out to finally will be a number that'll be to be determined, but having days off canceled gives us a larger pool of officers to deploy.
Chief, with the mayor banning the use of tear gas, what role will tear gas play in terms of other agencies?
You know, for us, we're prepared to operate within the rules that we're given. The details of that are probably still to be worked out as well. We still have some time in between now and then, but you know, for us, it's really about having the resources, people-wise and infrastructure-wise, and that will probably get worked out at a certain time. But for PPB, we operate within the rules that are put before us.
But what about the role of tear gas? OSP has been a key issue for them to have that tool in their toolbox. Will that be allowed?
I don't know that at this time, but like I said, there's still things in the works. So right now it's probably too premature to say yay or nay. And I don't know if Superintendent Davey has a different opinion or view on that. But I can just tell you what we have right now for PPB. We're, you know, in a position where that's not a tool that's available, and we're planning to go forward with, you know, the rules that are put before us, and we'll use other tools.
With days being canceled for officers, will most of your officers be working election day and night, if not all of them?
There'll be a lot. I mean, there are some that have pre-planned vacations or things where people are out of town or things that can't be rescheduled. So with no more days off or days off canceled, we'll bring all those officers back. So we'll have a substantial amount of officers available, but I can't give you an exact number.
Can Superintendent Davey and Sheriff Reese talk about tear gas, please? Will your own employees be using tear gas? Authorized?
Sure, the question was, will the Oregon State Police utilize CS gas or munitions? And our response has always been that is a tool and a resource the state police does have, and depending on what the circumstances are or the situation, it is something that the state police have the ability to deploy. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. Superintendent, is that a sticking point in establishing the command structure and how things will be organized for the
So the question he asked was that a sticking point in the command structure. The command structure is in planning mode. We're days before the election, and we're gathering all the intel that we need to find out if there is any information out there regarding threats to Portland elections and whatnot. This is the city of Portland, and it's ran by the chief of police, and the mayor is the commissioner. And so we understand that and recognize that, and we support that. It is chief level's agency. And so for state police, we have a statewide mission, and our mission is to all agencies and to all people of Oregon. So if we are called upon to come and assist, then at that time we'll know more what our command structure looks like. But right now we are in the planning and preparation mode.
Are you also coordinating with federal law enforcement?
State police, absolutely, we coordinate. We have very good relationships with all of our federal partners throughout Oregon and the national partners if we need to. So we have always tried to keep that door open. So in order to keep all the officers safe, tactically, it's very good for us to be able to know what our federal partners are doing. That is something for state police and our mission that is imperative.
Will your troopers be deputized?
Our troopers, actually, we do have a contingent that were deputized back on July 30th, I think it was. And so the answer is that is something we have had in place.
How many troopers do you anticipate having in place on election day and night here in the city?
So the question was, how many troopers do we plan to have in place? And right now, I have not seen the operational plan for the tactical piece of it. We have an overarching incident agency plan, and I've seen that and been definitely part of that. But we have our commanders that are in charge of that piece of it. So I cannot give you a number on the state police.
Is the police making the commitment throughout the week, not just on election night, but for the rest of the week?
So the question she asked, if state police is making a commitment, we're making a statewide commitment to all of Oregon. We have all the communities that are here, the cities, the counties, the 36 different counties may need us also. So we are making a commitment to the people of Oregon. And that is where we are at right now. If it turns out on election night or the days following, the commitment is needed here, then your state troopers will be participating to keep everyone safe. If the commitment is another location, then we make the commitment to be there where we're needed. Thank you.
District Attorney Schmidt, could you speak to the prosecutorial guidelines that will be in place? Will they be the same as during other protests, or?
Yep. Yeah. My office's guidelines are still in place as we've been handling everything, focusing on cases of property damage and violence, prioritizing making those cases. So it'll be the same policy that we have in place now.
DA Schmidt, there are certain cases stemming from recent protests where defendants are facing state charges and federal charges for the same offense. Do you anticipate that continuing? Is there communication with federal prosecutors on those cases?
Yeah, we've met with Bill Williams, his office, several times, so we're in communication with one another, but we are separate sovereigns. We are going to read the police reports and look at the evidence we have and make the cases that we can make. They are doing the same thing. So for the time, they're doing what they're going to do, and we're going to keep going on the cases that we have on the state side.
So even if someone's facing federal charges for an offense that you've already charged, you're going to continue with the state charge?
At this moment, yes.
Is it helpful or frustrating to have the federal government prosecuting for almost identical charges that you're also prosecuting for?
Well, you know, their charges, their evidentiary things that they need are a little bit different than ours. So they're going to make the cases they want to make. They're underneath their orders and directives, and we're doing the same on our side. We have different evidence that we need to gather. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer to make our cases if we're trying to figure out what the level of assault is or the level of the damage. They don't have those things in the civil disorder charge that they're using, so they're slightly different, but we're doing our job and they're doing theirs.
Is that pretty unusual to have the federal government doing that?
You'd have to ask them about whether it's unusual. I mean, I've only been here for 3 months, so I have a long history, but it seems like a lower level case for them.
Might be a question for Chief Lavelle. Are there any other agencies that are going to assist you on election night and in the nights after, like some other counties, Clackamas, or Washington County, or any other city police department?
Potentially. We're still in discussions with some other partners, and there's other roles that those partners can fill as well in providing support. So at this point, I'm not sure that any of them are planning to provide what would be like crowd control resources, but it's very possible that some other partners, aside from the ones that you see here with me today, could be playing some type of support role.
Chief, how are your staffing levels at this point?
At this point, you know, it's been tough. We took, as you know, a big hit July 1 to our budget. We had some pretty large number of retirements in August, and those are people who we weren't able to replace because of our budget and our vacancy situation. So, I mean, we're pretty lean as an organization. We're doing our best to respond to calls for service, to address the rise that we've had in shootings and homicides and things of that nature. So we're just trying to resource the best we can with the resources we have available right now.
And what do you think of the proposal by some commissioners to eliminate the rapid response team at CERT, among others?
Yeah, well, those are very important units. They provide, a very important role, and CERT in particular provides a life-saving function. I mean, their armor, their ability to give us time to talk with people who are barricaded or in crisis is very important. They're the folks that officers call when they have calls that need a specific skill set or more tools. So, the loss of something like that would be very impactful. But we're still looks like a week out from a budget vote to see kind of where we'll end up as far as potential future cuts. So we're doing the best we can to put out information and give people kind of a good sense of what the police bureau staffing looks like right now and what potential cuts could mean in the future.
Chief, can you address the claim that cutting $18 million more from your budget will not result in a staff reduction? Can you see that happening?
From where I sit, I don't see a path forward from an $18 million cut that wouldn't result in people being laid off.
Like how many?
It's hard to say because we'd have to look at, what units and where and kind of where else we could save money. But it could be, a cut of triple digits, over 100 people potentially. But it's hard to say until you actually sit down and look at org charts and start crunching numbers. But a cut of $18 million would be devastating.
Chief, it's less than a week out from Election Day. I'm not understanding why we don't have an answer as to actually who's going to be in charge on election night of all these agencies.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, these things are very fluid. I mean, we're talking every day pretty much, and we'll probably talk every day into Election Day. But there's still some things to be decided on what the actual command structure is going to look like. I just tell you right now, that's not in cement. We don't have like the full IAP and things like that done, so that's why. But things are very fluid and can change between now and Election Day too.
Do you have any information about planned protest demonstrations and any information that you know about possibly crime, violence, or property damage? Any information about that yet?
I don't in particular, but we do have folks that look into that and keep an eye on that sort of thing. And we do get some information prior about planned events, planned direct action things that take place. But a lot of it, from our perspective, is somewhat reactionary. I mean, we have to react to what people decide to do, whether they decide to comply, where they decide to go, and what activity they decide to engage in. So a lot of it is reactionary in nature, but we do have some pre-planned events that we can plan a little bit better for.
Are you in communication with the leaders of those planned events as we speak?
I can't say, and if we were, I don't know if I would say that at this point anyway.
I just want to clarify, so is it still on the table that PPB might use tear gas on election night?
Right now, I can only tell you like where we're at right now, and right now that's not a tool that's available to us. Things could happen between now and election night, but right now, PPB, as far as our planning, that's not a tool that's available.
What's determining that 1 week timeline? You said, I think Sheriff Reese mentioned that you're planning a week out after election.
From my point of view, it makes sense to make plans depending on how you manage your resources. It could be kind of arbitrary. I mean, for us, it's really dependent on what we have. We could have a very quiet, peaceful election season, and then maybe adjust down, or things could be protracted and we have to expand out.
Have you, in planning scenarios, have you discussed any more extraordinary potentialities, like if the president chooses to leave office and there's more widespread unrest involved in National Guard and all of that?
We've had conversations and tried to plan around what things might look like, but for the most part, it's just kind of a guess, and it's just really finding a baseline that makes sense to plan for and leaves you in a position where you have the ability to flex and adjust as needed.
We'll finish with Maxine's question, and then we're gonna have to break up.
Can you explain a little further what actions the deputies will take around the ballot drop-off locations to protect the integrity of the election?
No, we want to make sure that we have a quick response to any concerns, particularly criminal in nature, at ballot locations, any intimidation or efforts to suppress the vote. So we'll have deputy sheriffs assigned countywide to respond to those calls for service.
We actually have deputies stationed near drop boxes and things like that?
They won't be stationed near drop boxes. We'll respond to calls for service. Specific calls that come into the Bureau of Emergency Communications will then be directed to that team. Thank you.
We want to thank you all for coming and helping us provide this information to the community. You can contact the respective PIOs of these agencies if you need some more information about something that was said, and we'll be in touch obviously through the weekend and into next week.